Hi, I'm Dennis Bro, and I'm one half of Culture and Barbarism. I don't know which half I am, but I don't even want to guess. My partner Toby Miller is not on for this time, but he will be back next time. Today, special edition of Culture and Barbarism on media, all kinds of alternative media. Uh, my interlocutor will be Jack Shalom, and we this is also a pitch for support for listener-sponsored radio in New York on the Pacifica Network WBAI. And our subject today is alternative media, AI, and Robin Hood. So uh, welcome to Culture and Barbarism, and let's let the barbarism begin. Today's more barbarism than culture.
And I'm so happy to be talking with our wonderful longtime contributor to Arts Express, Dennis Bro, via Zoom, all the way from Paris, who's our brilliant cultural and media critic based in Paris. And Dennis, how are you? And what are you up to?
I'm good. I've just come back from Cannes, and I was there for 2 weeks, and I have just finished the first draft of my new novel, The Sixth Harry Palmer, and the completion of the second trilogy called The Dark Ages. And this one is called Pornocopia. And it's about the dominance in the U.S. of the porn and gambling industries, which is in some way what the working class is left with. So that's the subject.
That's what it is. It's kind of bread and circuses, but without the bread, and the circuses are carefully controlled. So that's why we're pitching today. And as you know, BAI is a non-commercial, listener-sponsored radio. We are hoping that people will become BAI buddies, which you can do by donating at buddy.wbai.org. Dennis, that sounds like you're really getting into the heart of the deterioration and manipulation of culture going on all around us.
Certainly is. The book is set in Vegas and LA, and these are the sites. And it also is about this moment. It's 1952. So it's about this moment of the beginning of a collusion, which is only going to grow deeper between the mob, uh, financial interests, big business, and the mob, financial interests, and what's the third? Oh, and the government. Yeah, because Eisenhower is about to come in, and it also has it has something to do with also the overthrow of Mossadegh in Iran. Actually, oddly enough.
Well, that's an important nexus that you're describing there, and of course we're seeing now the exponential intersection of that, where government is the mafia, is organized crime, and it's totally pornographic in the sense that people's real feelings are denied and shut down, and we're just left with some kind of external pleasures that are supposed to satisfy us. Well, what
which in the end proved quite unsatisfying.
exactly? Quite unsatisfying. So, you're there in Paris. What's happening on the streets in France right now? You know, in the U.S., we don't get in the mainstream press a lot of what's happening, especially with the working class. So, I'd love to hear a little bit what you can report or what you're seeing.
Well, what's going on right now is the bataille de le budget, the battle of the budget, and it's a very crucial thing. And the French are in the forefront here in terms of what are they going to put up with, because Europe wants to take back its social programs and it wants to get rid of the social democracy. And the French are contesting it. And what happened last week is extraordinary. They passed a part of the budget, which is about medical insurance, and they cut $12 billion from everyone's medical insurance. So what's going
Wow.
on is there's a lot of anger because everyone can see what's going to go on and they can see their medical bills jumping. And they did it with, last time with the budget in the last session, it was passed with this thing called 49.3, where you don't have to take a vote. It's just an imperious, they say, well, we're too tied up, we can't reach a resolution, so we're just going to pass the whole thing anyway without a vote. Okay, this one was, they used another section of the Constitution called 47.1, and 47.1 says, well, if there's 50 days of debate on something like the health budget, which is really crucial, and you can't resolve it, then we just send it on to the Senate, to the Senate, which is like our Senate, So it got sent on. So this is ridiculous, And let me just say also that contributing to this betrayal is the Socialist Party, red centrist Democrats.
Oh.
So, you have the LFI, and then in the middle for the left, you have the communists and the Greens, who kind of will go either way. They abstained from this vote on the health care, but the LFI is the one that's really opposing this budget, and the socialists are just going along with it. It's disgusting to watch it,
Well, it's so interesting to hear this.
Humor writ large in France, that's what it is.
It's so interesting to hear this because, of course, in the United States, we're facing exactly the same thing where people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are talking about that her family's Medicare costs are going to, not Medicare costs, I'm sorry, her medical insurance costs are going to double. So it's fascinating to hear that this is evidently an international phenomenon that perhaps the capitalists realize this is where they're going to start extracting money next from. So that's fascinating to hear. I'm wondering, here in the United States, Trump has made some immense cuts on the arts funding in the U.S., which is, directly impacting WBAI, and I'll do my spiel a little bit later. But I want to hear from you. Are there arts cuts happening in the rest of Europe or in France that you know?
Yes, the arts are part of the social welfare program. They grew up and they were financed after World War II along with everything else. So they're part of this huge cut, because Europe now has swung massively toward, military Keynesianism. That is the only industries that are growing right now, and they're growing by leaps and bounds, are the arms industries, while people get left behind. It's the most insane thing that I've witnessed since I've been here, and I've been here for 10 years. I've never seen anything like it,
That really is scary because we always thought, to look to Europe as at least the place where you could have, the hour-and-a-half lunch and free Medicare and, cheap theater tickets and the arts being funded. And to know that that's being destroyed now also, that the Europeans are being forced to give that up is really frightening and talks about the power of international capitalism right now and the need to fight back. So with that, let's talk about WBAI for a minute, as sort of a beacon in the midst of a super billionaire owned Washington Post, a genocide ignoring New York Times, and NPR, better known as National Pentagon Radio.
National Petroleum Radio.
Agreed. National Petroleum Radio. I mean, I feel we have to name names. And I'm not worried that any of this is going to be cut out, as it might be in other stations.
One thing is, if Starbucks has their way, what you'll be contributing is about the price of half a latte. So
that's true.
And that's why the strike that Mondami is supporting is so crucial. The second thing is, What Prairie does is very, very important. She now has Garland Nixon.
Yes.
She has the really more sort of political, and topical interviews with artists, with actors, and so that's a very important space, and we don't want that space closed down. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of BAI being important is
Yes.
closing down of media and the concentration of media. And we're going to talk about this. I have a piece coming up on my podcast, Culture and Barbarism, with Toby Miller. That's the subject of our podcast, which we're going to record this Friday. But you are seeing this massive concentration of right-wing and Zionist media, such that we've never seen before.
Yes.
That you have Larry Ellison and his son David, and Larry, they've melded. They've mind melded. They're really the same entity, because Larry is contributing all the money to keep Paramount afloat. But, so they right now are in charge of CBS News. And from the fringe right wing, we have Barry Weiss, who's now the chief editor. And you've already seen these very strange changes in CBS, like, 60 Minutes, very bizarre. After they sort of caved and paid Trump, in the new season, the new 60 Minutes, that they led off with the UCF, with fighting, which is a sop to Trump. And of course, we know that on the for the 250th anniversary, Trump wants to stage a UCF fight on the lawns of the White House. So. And then the next, a couple of weeks later, they have an interview with President Trump. Wow, that guy's never on any media at all. So difficult to get him, And of course, that all this is just genuflecting. That's all they're doing, And so now you're seeing, now they control CBS News. Okay. Paramount, with its money, already has its hand in TikTok.
Yes.
TikTok was the place where people were watching, what was going on. The slaughter in Gaza. It was turning under 40-year-olds against the consensus, So now they put in place, a censor to try to keep this off, try to keep these videos off the airwaves in TikTok. And the other thing is, Paramount now is probably the most likely candidate to buy Warner Brothers, which means they would also have their hand in CNN, So they would control, not that the mainstream media is anything at all to shake anything at, but it would now be turned into more right-wing Zionist media and start to look more like Fox media. So that's what we're facing. So media, like BAI, shows like Prairie's are more and more important because the mainstream sphere is starting to close down. But I want to say one other thing about that, and that is that behind that, they're afraid. In order to exert this kind of power, in order to step out and to announce themselves this directly, they are afraid of what's going on. They are losing the battle, the narrative battle, and it's Prairie's show and shows like it, with Garland Nixon, with us, with Prairie, that is what's contributing to, sort of shattering this narrative, which is so important.
I think that's such an important point to emphasize. As horrible as things are, it's also an incredible masks off moment. I mean, they have lost the under 40 population in terms of the Israel narrative that I grew up with and you may have grown up with. Yes. We just know Israel as a bloody genocidal country, and we understand the immense interference in international politics everywhere, including the United States, and I assume France also. It's just everywhere. There's no doubt about it that the United States and Israel are the bad guys, and it's plain for the world to see. And yes, they're desperately trying to change the narrative, and they're smart. They know where to go. They know where to go. They know to go to TikTok. They know to go to CBS and Paramount, and they're suing ABC. Get them in line also. They're very smart, but but they can't put their fingers in the dike everywhere. And we too are everywhere. The working class and the common people and what's known popularly as the 99%, we do outnumber them. We outnumber them everywhere.
And the countries of the global south
And the countries of the
are
global south.
really finding their voice.
Yes, absolutely. So an outlet like WBAI is so precious, and you have to understand, if it disappears, it's not going to come back. There's no way to bring it back. We're in the middle of the FM dial, which I know people under 40 may be laughing at me. What's a dial? But it actually is very important that it's on the same, in the middle of the dial of all the commercial stations, because traditionally, non-commercial listener-sponsored stations were grouped at the very bottom of the dial, 90.1, 90.3, 90.5. And even with digital, radio tuners in your car, you still sort of have to fiddle and pass through commercial stations to get to WBAI, which is fascinating because it's in the middle of the dial by a complete accident of history. So we're not going to be skipped over. It's easy for people to skip over those beginning 90.1, 91.2, 89.7, whatever it is. But that BAI is in the middle of the dial, sandwiched in New York City. I think it's sandwiched in between some stations that are owned by Disney, by ABC, by CBS. It's fascinating. So we have the ability to be come on upon by accident, and you it's BAI all of a sudden because everything sounds different. It's not the slick music and the slick voices. It's like human beings. And Dennis, I know you've done, your radio podcast for a long time now, and you probably understand that radio is a unique medium. The intimacy of radio is unlike any other medium. People turn on the radio because they want human contact. They don't turn on the TV to get human contact. They'll have it so they have a buzz in their ear or something. But to actually hear a live voice, I describe it sometimes as it's like going to bed with someone and whispering in their ear, because that's what radio really is like. It's a very, very important human-to-human contact. And in this time, when all the forces are lined up to deny humanism, to deny that we're people with interior lives and who want their external lives to be better, a station like BAI is so important, where you know and trust the voices on it. So I'm urging people to become a BAI buddy.
Yes, and let me say something else. The WBA is not it's not AI. And it is very different from AI as you've described. It's the opposite, and we're going to do a show which will a segment of it will be on Prairie Show on AI and the two gigantic problems with AI. The one is the boom, the bubble that AI has, so that we're the 6 leading AI companies subtracted from the US economy, the economy would be flat. The economy would be in a recession. And so, Oh, and these companies, the 6 companies besides NVIDIA, which is making money, these 6 companies have made no money on AI. They've just
Wow.
invested billions and billions. Microsoft just bought 3 Mile Island. So
No.
Microsoft is going to use 3 Mile Island to restart the nuclear reactors to power its AI.
Oh, and
So
they
that's
just want us to sit still for that. They want us to sit still so they can build their data centers, their nuclear power, double our utility bills so that they can force us out of work and replace us with AI. It's
That's true. You know,
unbelievable.
In China, there's a big, healthy discussion about what will happen, what jobs, and they're very careful about which jobs to develop AI around. Of course, in the US, there's no discussion about this. It just can't be talked about. And the other issue, the big issue around AI also, after the issue of the bubble that'll burst and what will happen to people after it bursts is is the environmental issue. The amount, I mean, are we all going to have no electricity so that we can have this miracle of AI, which is really, you know, the last gasp of Western capitalism? Is that what we're going to trade for it? So we're going to be sitting around, you know, having our AI miracle while we have no electricity? Is that where we're heading? You know?
Well, I want to ask you, Dennis, this may not be on your radar, but here in the United States, it was on my radar. For the first time, the number one country music song was completely AI. The voice, the music, the lyrics, completely AI. And the truth is, you can't tell it from a lot of mainstream stuff. Why?
Right.
Because it's pulling all the data from mainstream stuff. That's what we've given up. You know, every time you answer a phone on the other end, they're taking your voice and they're taking your inflections and they're taking the way you put together words and they're using it for their AI.
Yes, you know, you mentioned music, but there's an Amazon series by the Russo brothers. And it was a big deal when it launched, but called Citadel. But it's terrible, you know, and it shows that this series could have been written by AI because it just slavishly follows all and hits all of the plot points it's supposed to exactly at the points it's supposed to hit them. You know, and it hasn't been a success. People have not jumped to it the way they're supposed to, you know. It hasn't quite worked. You know, I think it's going to be on maybe next week, but I reviewed Robin Hood. You know, the current Robin Hood, which is a product of Amazon and of MGM Plus. It's on MGM Plus, and you know, and Amazon bought MGM Plus. So I call it Jeff Bezos's Robin Hood. You know,
Oh,
because it's two. It's Robin Hood is a Saxon lord versus the sheriff who's a Norman lord, and it's just two lords having it out, which is exactly mainstream media. That's all you get. The Democrats and the Republicans, two lords having it out, you know. And I did say that you know, you know, these two CEOs hammer it out. Well, the rest of us serfs are left to till our digital fields on the AI manor, you know, and so it's closer to reality than they mean it to be.
yeah. I read your piece on Robin Hood and was I was flabbergasted. I mean, I was gobsmacked because the whole point of Robin Hood, of course, is the class difference that Robin Hood stole from the rich to give to the poor. Even the TV series that I grew up with, you know, on Channel 11 or whatever it was, the theme song went loved by the good. No, feared by the bad, loved by the good, Robin Hood, Robin Hood. And that was the whole point of the series.
I have a reading of that show. By the way, The Adventures of Robin Hood, which ran on British television from 55 to 59 and American television from 55 to 58, was a big hit, actually. Challenged the Milton Berle show and
Yeah.
Gracie Cullen. It was right up there. And that show was written by Blacklistees. It was
No
written
kidding.
by Blacklistees in three places. In New York, you had Ring Lardner Jr. In
Oh,
LA, you had Waldo Salt, and
uh,
in Europe you had Norma Barzin, whose husband was blacklisted. So you had three different groups of blacklistees who were writing the show, and it's got an amazing. What I wanted to do with the show was compare it to the 55 Bandung Conference and to show how, in ways, I call it Robin Hood and his merry band of guerrilla warriors. It takes a stand on Bandung, because of course these blacklistees were very aware of it. Paul Robeson was in Bandung; he could go, but W.B. Du Bois they grabbed his passport and they wouldn't let him leave and go to Bandung.
oh, wow. Well, speaking of Robin Hood, let's do a little bit of Robin Hood right now. If we want to be feared by the bad, loved by the good, Robin Hood, you can do that. You can help. Let's steal from Starbucks and give to WBAI, as you said, Dennis. Become a WBAI buddy. And Dennis, I'm wondering how closely, if at all, are folks in Paris watching Zoran Mamdani's election as mayor in New York City? Does that resonate at all in Europe?
They're certainly aware of it, that's for sure. I think there's still, the sort of the ruling elite is much more into the Democrat, Chuck Schumer and those people,
Mhm.
and but they are aware that there is a challenge and that challenge has happened. And the person who's most aware of it, of course, is Donald Trump, who now uses the word affordability.
Yes.
Was never in his vocabulary, was not in his lexicon before Zoran Mondami. And, Trump, of course, Trump has the, what will you call it? He has the scam affordability that the Walmart Thanksgiving dinner is now costs less. Of course, it's also got about 35% less food in it, which he doesn't say. So, that's his claim for affordability. That the single thing is the Walmart turkey costs a little less this year than it did last year, while there's much less around it. So that's what he does around affordability. But that word affordability has not caught on here yet. But boy, it's really catching on in the U.S. It's a great word, and it really is a winning word. Especially in cities where affordability is really an issue.
Well, of course, in Paris, as you said, you already have smaller Communist Party and Socialist parties, which and Green Party, which are sometimes real disappointments. But for us here in New York, it's a big deal. Oh wow, we got somebody who calls themselves a democratic socialist. I've been seeing different analysis of it, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing for Mamdani to be meeting with Trump. Curious what your take is on it.
I think what we don't want is, and what New York doesn't want is Trump to New York drop dead.
Oh, yeah.
So in a way, he sort of has to see if he can smooth some things out, or Trump will simply cut off all the funding and kill the baby with the bathwater, as Churchill said.
Yeah.
Let's strangle the baby with the bathwater. That's what Trump could do. So I think he has to do something like this. And clearly Trump liked him. He recognized somebody who, like Trump, is media savvy and is as media savvy as Trump, and they got along around that. Those things with Trump, they don't tend to have any meaningful length, but still it's better than the two being completely at arms because New York needs the money.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation to be in. I mean, to try and create socialism in one city is a tough thing.
Yeah.
It's a tough place to be.
But, Seattle also has had things. This has had an effect across the country, and you'll see more, and it will have a greater and greater effect, and it will reverberate next year also, as there are more challenges from the left to the Democratic Party stalwarts who really need to be replaced. I mean,
Yes, I hope so. And
or
of course,
die. Yeah. I mean,
a- and just as we don't want to see a headline that says, Trump to New York City drop dead, we don't want to see uh, BAI dropping dead either. But I think we understand now, within the Pacifica community, but which there's a lot of infighting as always in the Pacifica community. Uh, I'm not going to go into that on air, but uh, I think there's a realization that we can't anymore rely on government funding, and maybe the silver lining is that's a good thing. Sometimes great art comes out of desperate times and understanding that you're going to have to do it all yourself. So again, be one of those 6,000 people. If 6,000 buddies just contribute $10 a month, that's over $1 million a year. And that could provide us with independence. We don't have to depend on anybody else. You can see the other public radio stations, quote unquote, public radio stations like NPR, really, when their public funding got cut, it didn't really matter that much. Not because they had a listener base, because it was a very low percentage of their funding was through listeners. Most of their funding is through big foundations, through big corporate foundations. So there aren't too many choices. You can be funded by government, you can be funded by big corporations, or you can be funded by listeners. And that's the difficult but maybe holy and sacred way, and ultimately the most rational way to fund WBAI and alternative media through the listeners. So, Dennis, what do you think is the most overlooked happening in the arts that's going to have an effect on the entertainment industries that you can see?
Well, I think we talked about it. I think this new concentration, actually, that is sort of the story of streaming right now, that we thought some of these companies were just going to collapse, but now they've gotten this the ones that were primed to collapse, the NBC Peacock has Comcast now behind it, and the other one, CBS and Paramount Plus, now has this Oracle money behind it. Is one of the six. Oracle is one of the six companies benefiting from AI. So this concentration, I think, is the biggest story right now. And it becomes more and more necessary for us to fight this, and more necessary for us to, and more and more necessary for all forms of media which challenge this and which challenge this concentration. I did want to say something, which is in my other life, well, and so also in my life in BAI, I'm a television critic.
Yes,
So I have a couple of recommendations I wanted to.
please.
One is a series called The Gone. Now, they're in season 2. It's a really good series, and it was just mentioned finally by this woman who's not too sharp, who writes the New York Times, who recommends what TV series to watch, and usually they're just awful. It's the worst of the worst. But somebody recommended this series to her, and so she's bringing it up.
How do you spell that, Dennis?
The Gone, Gone.
Oh, Gone. Gotcha.
Yeah. So this is a series that's it's done by New Zealand and Ireland. It's a joint production that's set in New Zealand and that features Maori characters along with Irish characters, and it's very, very interesting. In season 1, the high point is this Irish cop who's got Huntington's disease, and he knows it, and he's trying to figure out what to do about it, is talking to this Maori elder. And he says, we've got something in common. Both of us were screwed by the British.
Good, good.
So that's a very good series. I also want to suggest just for one moment this other series called Sheriff Country. Now, this is a CBS series, and last year Matlock was the hit of the season,
Yeah.
and nobody could figure out where the heck did this series come from, but it was wonderful. They didn't quite manage to bring back for a second season. It should have been one season, unfortunately, and this is a commercial thing that, they were ready to end it, and then they got the call, and Kathy Bates said, yes, I'll do another season. So they tried to extend it, and it hasn't quite worked. Okay,
Yes.
this series, Sheriff Country, is really interesting. In the first episode, it's about a sheriff, female sheriff in this town, and I think it's called Tidewater or something like that. A small town which she loves, and the first episode had no murders in it. It was a CBS series without violence. It was more like the sheriff was kind of a social worker, and it really worked. But of course, you can just hear the CBS executive saying, "I'm sorry, this is not going to fly. Either you get some murder in this, or, Sheriff Country's off the air." So the next one, of course, there's a murder, and and then takes it from there. But it still retains somewhat of the social worker aspect to it, and a female sheriff. And what's her name? The woman who's the lead character, Maureen Beck-Aaron, is really good. She was the concubine in Firefly, a really wonderful series, and she was in Q. She was the queen bee commanding the extinction of the Earth, which is starting to look like a better idea each week of the Trump presidency, and the European sycophants which support it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the funny thing is, you mentioned Matlock. My wife and I watched it, and pretty faithfully, and I totally agree with you. The first season was really interesting, and now it's getting pretty tired. They're following a formula, and they can't really extend it. And you may know that there was somebody on this show was accused of sexual assault. Actually,
that's right. Yes, he's off the show.
So he's off the show, and they've got to do rewrites. So it's kind of falling apart. But I have to say, for all I enjoy it, I never cease to be amazed by how CBS can come up with yet one more law enforcement show. It'll be the FBI, it'll be a PI, it'll be a cop, it'll be now a sheriff. There's always more law enforcement out there that they can celebrate.
Yes, it is. It reminds me of, in the 50s with the McCarthy period, in the 40s, we had the fugitive outsider who fled, the tyranny of the law, and the populace was on his side.
Yes.
When the McCarthy period came, there was nothing but law enforcement, every kind of law enforcement and every conceivable kind of agency. There were post office shows. It was like it just never ended. And CBS is like that. But I have to say, Sheriff Country is a bit different, actually. It is
good.
A little different. You're not going to believe it, especially on CBS. And it's surrounded, of course, by CBS ads for, the FBI, FBI International, FBI Omaha, FBI Tokyo, whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thank you. And another good recommendation. Boy, this is like a PBS seg. I hate these kinds of segs, but I'm going to segue into it. Another great recommendation is to become a WBAI buddy in the name of Arts Express. That would be really nice. So go to buddy.wbai.org, and you can give any amount you like, really, but we're recommending $10, $15, or $20 a month automatically via your credit card. And if you'd rather call up and, do it over the telephone, call 1-833-922-4692, 1-833-922-4692. And believe it or not, that's the same as 1-833-WBAI-NYC if you use the little letters there. And you can leave a message. You probably won't get somebody on the first time, but don't let that deter you. Please leave a voicemail with your name and phone number, and you will get a call back. And they will be happy to take your donation, and you can become one of the 6,000 people who, if they contribute $10 a month, will make over $1 million a year for WBAI. You can't imagine what that means. You just can't imagine it. Well, I think we probably should be wrapping up now. Dennis, is there anything you'd like to add that you haven't spoken about that you'd like to tell us, or do your own little pitch for BAI again?
Well, I just want to say, I just think in the whole sort of media ecology, WBAI holds a really important place alongside all of these other podcasters who are really challenging the corporate narrative, and that is the job. That is our job, is to challenge this narrative, and BAI is sort of in the forefront of that, and it's very, very important, because that narrative, especially now, that narrative is going to get more above ground publicity, but that doesn't mean that anyone's going to believe it. It fades every day. I mean, the Nobel Peace Prize going to a woman in Venezuela who was urging the U.S. to come in and destroy Venezuela. These institutions in the West just shoot themselves in the foot every day. And you think that people aren't watching this? You think they don't know? But it's our job on BAI and the other podcasters to drive this home and to keep telling people, there really is truth out there, and you can find it, but you have to look for it, and you have to look for it beyond mainstream media.